Cabinet approves the proposal for one nation, one election, allowing simultaneous conduct of assembly and parliamentary elections. The government fast-tracks the review of the Income Tax Act. Sources say it may propose the removal of redundant clauses. That's an NDTV profit exclusive. Sources say marquee investors such as Madhu Kela, Akash Bhansali, Sanjay Dangi and Rohit Kothari have invested in SpiceJet's QIP, aiming to raise 3,000 crore rupees for the cash-strapped airline. Jammu and Kashmir goes to polls for the first ever assembly election since the bifurcation. A voter turnout of over 58% was recorded as of 5 in the evening in phase 1 of the polls. Doda records the highest turnout of 69.33%. Google's parent, Alphabet, wins the challenge against €1.5 billion antitrust fine. EU General Court annuls the fine imposed by a Brussels court, adds that the institution made errors in its assessment. The Hezbollah warns Israel that it would be punished after hundreds of pagers used by its members exploded in southern Lebanon. The blast injured 2,800 people while killing 9. Good evening and welcome. You're watching Profit 360 on NDTV Profit, and I'm Nupur Talwar Suri. Now, the Nifty and the Sensex have snapped their two-day rally. Volatility spiked ahead of the Fed decision tonight, negatively impacting IT stocks the most. Now, Harsh is joining us with a wrap of all the market action.
Well, tough day on the street. You had the Nifty 50, under some amount of pressure from most sectors. What really held it up, and I'll talk of the positives first, is the banking and financial services sector really holding on and helping the Nifty hold on to absolutely any loss that was coming through, especially from IT. So it was a tale of essentially two of the largest constituents in terms of sectors on the Nifty 50, the Nifty Bank and the Nifty IT Index. The Nifty IT Index was down 3% in trade, and you had the Nifty Bank, which was just about 1% higher at close. And that was the tug of war, at least on the Nifty 50. It was down around 1/5%. The breadth of the market extremely poor. You saw almost a 1:3 in favor of the declines, and you also had a tough day in terms of the breadth. Broader markets is where all the pressure was at, especially on the mid-cap index, down nearly 1%. You had the small cap index down nearly 0.5%, so the broader markets underperforming the Nifty. So a little bit of a rotation coming into play with the Nifty Bank doing very well. 1% higher, with several of the largest banks doing well and contributing well to the Nifty. ICICI, HDFC among the top contributors on the Nifty. In terms of other sectors, most notably, let's pull out something like an auto, down around 1/3% thereabouts. You also had the Nifty Media and Metal Index, which were under pressure. The Nifty Pharma was down 1.5%. So on the broader end of the side of things, the Nifty Pharma was one of the other sectors which were under pressure. Overall, a tough day on the eve of the Fed, essentially giving us a verdict of whether it will be 25 or 50. Going to be very interesting next couple of days for markets.
All right, Harsh, thank you very much for that. Now, in fact, in the past few weeks, it's seen that more foreign money is moving into cheaper Asian markets along with India. Now, here's what Vikas Khemani of Carnelian Asset Management had to say about it.
Precisely, I will say that. Like I said, I will probably correct you. The point you meant, money is moving towards cheaper markets. So money is moving towards emerging market, or money is moving away from emerging market. Now, within that, there is an overweight, underweight allocation happens. Like, for example, when last 3 years, when emerging markets were losing money, India also lost money, but India on a relative basis lost lesser money because India was looking more promising. Same way, when money is coming back, initially money might go more towards the markets where they were underweight, right? Which could be, in your definition, the cheaper markets. But my point is that this money is allocation money. And then within that, like let's say if you give me, any investor give me money to invest into equities, I might do that allocation in different sectors. Same way, money allocated towards emerging market will do different in different markets based on their own conviction. The point is that overall water levels are going up, overall flows are going up.
All right, now it's a historic decision. The cabinet has given the nod to one nation, one election. Now, this was a long pending promise that was made by the Modi government. What this means is that state assemblies as well as the parliament will go to polls together. Now, this decision follows the recommendation of a high-level committee that was led by the former President Ram Nath Kovind. Now, the report was submitted in March. The committee's report suggested that simultaneous elections would enhance governance efficiency, save resources and foster social cohesion. Let's listen in to what the Minister Ashwini Vaishnav had to say.
There is a widespread support for simultaneous elections in the country. इसीलिए एनडीए सरकार की कैबिनेट ने आज सर्वसम्मति से इन रिकमेंडेशंस को एक्सेप्ट किया और इसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन 2 फेजेस में होगा, जैसा कि कमेटी के रिकमेंडेशंस में है। फर्स्ट फेज में लोकसभा और असेंबलीज के इलेक्शंस को साइमल्टेनियस कराने का प्रयास होगा और उसके सेकंड फेज में लोकल बॉडी इलेक्शन से जो है ग्राम पंचायत, जिला पंचायत, ब्लॉक में पंचायत समिति और जितने भी अर्बन लोकल बॉडीज हैं, चाहे म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज हो, चाहे म्यूनिसिपल कमिटीज हो, चाहे म्यूनिसिपल कॉरपोरेशन हो, उन सब के लोकल बॉडी इलेक्शंस को विद इन 100 डेज ऑफ जनरल इलेक्शंस में करवाना, जिससे कि एक बार में सारे इलेक्शन का प्रोसेस कंप्लीट हो और फिर 5 साल तक सब के सब मेहनत करके देश के निर्माण में लगे।
Now, in fact, the former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi spoke exclusively to NDTV Profit.
They have recorded everything, every negative impression and every positive impression very honestly, very truthfully. All the history, the historical document, everything is truthfully recorded. That is the plus point of the committee. But now the recommendations. Some of the recommendations are almost amusing. Now, what they say that when we talk of simultaneous election, we are talking of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha only, and which means Panchayati Raj elections are excluded. To me, that is absolutely. I don't want to use the strong word because the committee was headed by our former Rashtrapati. Now, there are 4,120 MLAs and 543 MPs. Well, you are talking of 1,000 people and you are talking of a simultaneous election. 30 lakhs, 3 million Panchayati Raj elected people you have excluded. What kind of a simultaneous election is this? Now, secondly, the committee says, okay, so we can't do it together. We'll do it in 100 days. Now, that is also not simultaneous election because an election after 100 days is a new election, separate election, requires totally separate bandobast. So many machines, the entire machinery, polling stations, all have to be repeated after 100 days. So, in the name of simultaneous election, what are they recommending? Does it make any sense? And let me tell you, even if election commission by magic can produce all that in 100 days, all the voters who have come after taking leave from their factories, from their offices, will not be able to come back to the village within 100 days a second time. And if you deny this voting right to millions of people, it is the constitutional right which you will be encroaching on. What in the name of simultaneous election, about which, to me, let me tell you, there is no sincerity. If simultaneous election was a sincere thing, the elections which were already being held simultaneously, like Himachal and Gujarat, why were they separated by 25 days?
All right, now let's take a look at some of the global market action. Wall Street opened flat on the anticipation of the first Federal Reserve interest rate cut in 4 years. The usher-in of the cutting cycle is expected to further boost an already strong market. Now, European markets, however, were lower ahead of the Fed decision and the upcoming decision by the Bank of England. UK's inflation figures for August came in at 2.2%, in line with expectations. And let's, in fact, now go across to Pallavi Nahat of NDTV Profit to understand how the Fed action will impact India.
We're closely going to be watching out for the FOMC's decision today because it marks the pivot after the FOMC first began an extensive rate hike cycle after the pandemic to control inflation. This, after that, is likely to be the first in a series of rate cuts that's going to follow. Now, regardless of whether the FOMC decides to reduce its key interest rate by 25 basis points or by 50 basis points, the Reserve Bank of India, closer home, is anticipated to maintain its focus on domestic factors. Despite that, the Indian Central Bank will also be influenced by the effects of weaker global demand. On the policy front as well, the RBI's decision will be impacted from the spillovers by the US Fed decision, by the global monetary easing cycle that we're currently seeing is underway, and FX volatility as well. Now, the Fed's pivot could proceed and influence the RBI's change in stance and rate action going forward. That's according to Madhavi Arora, lead economist at MK Institutional Equities. What we're also going to be watching out for closely is the Fed dot plot, which will help determine how deep the rate cuts will be going forward. And we're also going to be watching out for the FOMC's commentary on the labor market and, on growth in the American economy. In terms of flows as well, the FOMC rate cut is a positive for flows to India as well as for the rupee.
All right, Pallavi, thank you very much for joining us on that. In fact, joining us on the broadcast is Peter Cardillo. He's the Chief Market Economist of Spartan Capital. Hi, Peter. Good to see you again. Peter, what's your sense of how much of a rate cut are we going to be seeing today, and what really will be the implications of a 25 basis point rate cut versus a 50 basis point rate cut?
I think we're headed for a 25 basis cut rate today, and I think the Fed is going to start, being cautious, like they were when they began raising rates. They started with 25, and then, of course, they became a little bit more aggressive. And I think the same scenario is going to play out today. And this is, the communique today is going to be quite important because we're going to learn what's the Fed's thinking in terms of economic growth, also on inflation, and maybe there might be some hint that they could get more aggressive, which by that I mean that we could be looking at a jumbo cup rate of 50% in December, or possibly 25 in November, 25 in December, which would total about 75 basis points. And, most of the macro news that we got so far indicates that the economy is still quite healthy. And we saw that yesterday. We saw that today with the housing starts, which were up rather sharply, especially permits. And so I think the Fed remains cautious. But I do believe that when we get the more inflation news next week, the PCE, that inflation is going to that the index is going to show that inflation continues to move in the right direction. And that will give the Feds a chance to be more aggressive. And so, like I said before, the possibility of a 50 basis points cut in the next few months is a good possibility, or 25 and 25, which would amount to 75 basis points.
Right, so you believe that the Fed will begin a little more conservatively. Now, what sort of a knock-on impact do you see of this cut on the Asian markets, and particularly, of course, on the Indian markets?
Well, let's put it this way. Today's decision is very important for some of the emerging markets, India, South Korea, South Africa. That probably means that they will follow suit. We saw Europe go on its own initiative, and they cut. The Bank of Canada cut. And so I think those three central banks that I just mentioned are likely to follow suit. And that's going to be good news for the Indian economy. So whatever the Fed today today's Fed move is important, not only for the United States, but I think for the global economy as well.
Right, and finally, how do you see the impact of this potential cut with respect, to the talk of U.S. Going into recession on the back of the tech bubble that everybody's talking about and, the labor data that's coming in?
Well, a recession occurs almost every 6 to 7 years. And, I think we're right for one. Is it going to happen anytime soon? No. Could it happen in 2025? Most likely. And that's why I think the Fed is going to have to be aggressive, because I think the Fed realizes that we're ripe for a recession in the latter part of 2025, and they don't want to weaken the jobs market too much. Otherwise, we could go into a deep recession. I think they'll try to cushion it so that if a recession occurs, it's going to be sort of like a dip-type recession where you enter and you get out rather quickly.
All right, Peter, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your views.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now on to an NDTV Profit exclusive. We learned from our sources that the government is fast-tracking a review of the Income Tax Act 1961. Now, the Finance Minister had announced modifications to the IT Act in July 2024's budget, and Shrimi Chaudhary is joining us for more.
Government is fast-tracking the comprehensive review of decade-old Income Tax Act 1961, aiming to complete the whole exercise by January 2025 ahead of the February budget. What we are picking up from our sources that the direct tax review panel constituted by CBDT, led by V.K. Gupta, senior tax official, is deliberating on a lot of interpretational issues and challenges and discussing how to simplify the entire act. Upon deliberation, what we have picked up from our sources is that up to 120 subsections, section and clauses identified as redundant and has no relevance in the current tax issues that could be scrapped. Other than that, they are more focused on rationalizing the exemption in the existing IT Act, and also how to simplify the entire appeal system to reduce the litigation. Direct tax code, however, is which is one of the most talked about point, and whether it is coming this time or not is unlikely, because the more focus is to make a simple language of the IT Act. What we are also picking up that there could be some sort of assistance they will be sought from the Law Ministry in drafting the certain sections. However, it is not yet clear that whether the government will bring certain amendment in the existing Act or there will be a replacement of the entire IT Act 1961.
All right, thank you very much for joining us on that. Now, moving on, marquee investors such as Madhu Kela, Akash Bhansali, Sanjay Dangi and Rohit Kothari may have invested in SpiceJet's 3,000 crore rupee QIP. Sources say that the investors have invested through their family offices, and Aditya Rao is joining us with more on this. Hi, Aditya. Take us through what you're picking up.
Yes, Nupur, absolutely. So what my sources are telling me that the SpiceJet QIP that closed yesterday, and the company was trying to raise 3,000 crores via this QIP with a green shoe option of 1,500 crores. So basically, my sources are telling me that marquee investors like Madhu Kela and Akash Bhansali are a part of the people, are a part of investors who have invested via their family offices, and there are also other names in this list of investors. That is basically Rohit Kothari is there, Sanjay Dangi is there. And if we talk about the other investors apart from the family offices, the names like Think Investments, Tata Mutual Fund, Bandhan Bank. So there are some key names that are coming up in this entire QIP investment, and also Discovery Fund, Plutus is there, Jupiter Fund Management is there. So when we talk about this entire issue, my sources are telling me that there are some top names who have invested in SpiceJet QIP. And let me remind you that the QIP was basically offered at a discount of 4.92% to the SEBI floor price, and the discount of 20.81% to the closing price of September 16. We need to remember all these things, and SpiceJet QIP is a key to watch right now, because the financial turbulence in the airline has overtaken the entire functioning of that particular airline, and SpiceJet basically right now needs a lot of investment to flow in to settle entire functioning.
All right, Aditya, thank you very much for joining us with those details. Well, Meta has announced that it will be rolling out Instagram teen accounts. Now, these would come with built-in content and messaging regulations. NDTV's Arun Singh sent us this report.
Instagram has come up with some special features of these teen accounts. First of all of these accounts will be private accounts by default. Then there'll be some messaging restrictions. Teens will be placed in the strictest messaging settings is what Instagram claims. But then there'll be some sensitive content restrictions as well. Now, there would be some kind of content which might not violate the content policy of Instagram, but it would still be sexually suggestive. So in those cases, Instagram will automatically restrict it for these teen accounts. And then there'll be limited interactions as well. Teens can only be tagged or mentioned by people they follow. I think this is a very interesting point. And automatically, Instagram will also be hiding words which might be offensive for teens, for young minds. And then, very importantly, there'll be time limit reminders. Now, remember, these reminders are also for us as well. I mean, we can also put these on app limits or on Instagram itself. But for teens, they'll get notification telling them to leave the app after 60 minutes each day, and then there'll be sleep mode. Now, this is something which is there for adults as well, which is called the quiet mode. And then you have sleep mode for teenagers here, where it will be turned on between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So that's one aspect of it. But then there is a stricter version of it, which is the supervision, which I am tagging it as stricter, because in this one, parents will be able to supervise their teens' accounts. Now, why do I say that it's stricter? Because parents will get insights into who their teens are chatting with. Now, while they can't read their teens' messages, but they'll still be able to monitor who they are chatting with. So this, I think, is a bit strict. And then they can also set daily time limits for them. And then they can decide how much time their teen can spend on Instagram each day.
Looks like a lot of teen parents will be looking forward to this. Moving on, now the Cabinet has approved the Unified Pension Scheme, which is set to be implemented on the 1st of April 2025. Now, according to DFS Secretary Nagaraju Madirala, the Finance Ministry is looking to quickly notify the operational framework for the scheme. This framework will detail the calculation mechanisms for pension benefits, which will vary based on factors such as personal and government contributions and any amounts withdrawn at retirement. Now, Jammu and Kashmir went to polls today. This marks the first assembly election since the abrogation of Article 370 in August of 2019, which stripped the region of its special status. As of 5 this evening, the voter turnout had reached over 58%, with over 2.3 million eligible voters participating across 24 constituencies, 16 in Kashmir and 8 in the Jammu region. And NDTV's Nazir Masoodi joins in with the latest.
This is the first election after abrogation of Article 370, first election in the Union Territory in the history of Jammu and Kashmir, and first election after a long gap of 10 years, assembly election. So there was enthusiasm since morning. People were waiting in long queues, waiting for their turn to cast their vote, which we showed through the day. Right now, almost this village in the Anantnag district's Bijbara area is done with voting. It just looks one or two people coming now. They come and one by one cast their vote. So largely by 4, the vote percentage was 50. It's expected to cross the last voting percentage in 2014. And through the day, what was the best thing is that, it was completely peaceful, without fear of violence, without fear of boycott calls, and clearly it was a relaxed atmosphere, even as massive security arrangements have been made as a precautionary measure which is being done across the country, and the security forces are more sensitive about Jammu and Kashmir, that they don't want any wrong message to go from here, that too on a polling day.
Well, on to the top international news story this evening. 9 people have died and over 2,800 people are badly injured in a simultaneously pager blast in Lebanon and Syria. The Hezbollah, a militant group backed by Iran, is blaming Israel's spy service for the attack. But what is the backstory? Malika Mishra from NDTV Profit now joins us. Hi, Malika. Take us through what you're picking up on this. And we are given to understand that the Hezbollah is actually blaming Israel's spy agency for these blasts.
Yeah, that's right. So just a little backstory. Hezbollah is basically a militant group that is backed by Iran. And in this context, I'll explain the entire story. So Hezbollah members have been using pagers in today's generation to avoid being tracked by Israelis. And this is because they do not want a direct war with them. In fact, they have been in a cross-border conflict with Israel since the Gaza incident that happened back in October. In fact, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah had warned members not to use cell phones, and his exact words were, "Break, bury or lock phones in an iron box." However, despite these measures taken by him, the group has been attacked and there has been a severe pager blast. One of the many theories behind this blast is the infiltration of supply chains, where basically small quantity of explosives, which is around 3 grams per pager, could have been implanted and before supplying them to Hezbollah members and then detonated remotely through a radio signal. Citing US officials, New York Times reported that just before the attack, the pagers received a message that seemed to be coming from Hezbollah leadership, but in fact, it triggered the attack. Now, do know that Hezbollah is not a kin of the US or the European Union directly. And a senior Lebanese security official said that a Taiwan-based company called Gold Apollo had received an order from Hezbollah to make 5,000 pagers. But the leader of Gold Apollo, the founder of Gold Apollo, said that these pagers were not made by his company. These pagers were in fact made by a company in Europe. So there's been a lot of confusion about who is behind the attack and for how long was this attack being planned. But all we know right now is that Hezbollah members are extremely angry and they have vowed a serious retaliation against Israel.
All right, Malika, thank you very much for joining us with that report. And in fact, that's all the time we have right now on this edition of Profit 360. Thank you for joining in, but stay with us on NDTV Profit for more.